Imagine London, 1888. You've got the gaslights barely cutting through the thick, soupy fog, long shadows everywhere, hiding God knows what, and there's this chill. But it's more than just the damp air off the Thames. It's fear. Real, palpable fear. And a name being whispered, Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, that name still resonates, doesn't it? So today we're diving deep into this enduring mystery. We're going to try and unmask the facts, pull apart the myths, and really look at the ongoing hunt for answers. Because, I mean, so much original evidence is just gone, and a lot of what people think are facts are, well, they're really just opinions. Fiercely debated ones at that.
Exactly. We've sifted through, a lot of historical accounts, modern research, trying to pull out the key insights. Our goal is to give you, listening, a clearer picture of this whole phenomenon, trying to separate the sensational stuff from what's actually significant, and maybe figure out why this killer, above others, remains such a fascinating, kind of unsolved puzzle.
Right. So let's start with the name itself. Jack the Ripper. It actually wasn't the first name he was given. That famous name, it popped up in a letter claiming to be from the killer, which the press naturally published. Before that, people were calling him the Whitechapel Murderer or sometimes Leather Apron.
And the area he operated in was incredibly small, wasn't it? We're talking, what, barely a square mile in the East End, Whitechapel, Spitalfields, Aldgate, even creeping into the city of London itself.
Really localized, which created this incredibly intense, focused terror.
So why does this particular case endure? He wasn't the first serial killer ever.
No, definitely not the first, but arguably the first to operate in a huge, literate city like London with this incredibly powerful, relatively new force, the mass press. And you have to remember the context of 1888 London. It was politically charged. You had liberals, social reformers, Irish Home Rule supporters, all sorts of groups trying to, well, use these horrific crimes to push their own agendas.
Right, and the press, its role was just unprecedented. Newspapers were documenting everything daily. The Ripper's supposed activities, police movements, public panic, editorials.
Well, absolutely. The press essentially manufactured this whole thing as a global event, a new thing.
Yeah.
But in doing that, they also created a lot of the myths. They kind of romanticized this brutal killer of vulnerable women into this larger-than-life bogeyman.
A dark figure of legend, almost.
Yeah, exactly. And the Ripper himself, well, he played his part. He left these horribly mutilated victims out in the open, impossible to ignore, terrifying a whole city, making the world pay attention.
And then the ultimate hook, he was never caught.
That's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
That fuels the romance, the endless speculation, the intellectual puzzle people still try to crack today.
Okay, so we've got the scene, the fear, the killer's calculated presence. But let's talk about the victims, real people behind the headlines. Who were they? And maybe surprisingly, even the number of victims isn't totally agreed upon, is it?
No, it's really not. The general consensus lands on 5, so-called canonical 5. But, some researchers argue it was only 4. Others push it to 7, maybe more. Back then, the public, the press, even lots of junior police officers, they thought it was 9 murders.
So the canonical 5, the ones most strongly linked, who were they?
Okay, so first was Marianne Nichols. People called her Polly. Murdered Friday, August 31st, 1888. Then Annie Chapman, Saturday, September 8th. Next, Elizabeth Stride, Sunday, September 30th.
And that was the same night as Catherine Eddowes, right? The double event.
Exactly, the double event. Catherine Eddowes also killed September 30th. And finally, Mary Jane Kelly, sometimes called Marie Jeanette, murdered indoors, actually, on Friday, November 9th, 1888.
But there are others who might fit the pattern.
Definitely possibilities. Martha Tabram, killed earlier, August 7th, 1888. Many think she could have been the first. The attack was similar in some ways. And there are genuine questions about Elizabeth Stride. Her injuries weren't quite as severe as the others, leading some to doubt if she was a true Ripper victim. Maybe he was interrupted. Philip Sugden, who wrote a really comprehensive book on this, put it well. He said, basically, at least 4, probably 6, just possibly 8. There's no easy answer.
Okay, so what do they have in common, these women?
Well, all 5 canonical victims, plus Tabram, were prostitutes. That's a key link. All killed in that short window, August to early November 1888. Most were killed outside Tabram, and Kelly being the exceptions there.
Did they know each other?
No evidence suggests they did. They varied in age, appearance. One other factor, most were drunk, or at least thought to be drunk, when they were attacked. Might have made them more vulnerable.
Let's shift to the Ripper's methods, his modus operandi. You mentioned something surprising earlier that we didn't really understand how he killed until quite recently.
Yeah, it's true. A full picture of his MO, his technique, wasn't really pieced together convincingly until, Well, several years ago, relatively speaking.
That is fascinating because for ages, the common theory was that he attacked from behind, right? While the victim was supposedly bent over for anal sex. What was that based on and why is it wrong?
Right. That theory was around for a long time. It partly fit certain, maybe prejudiced ideas about the victims and the nature of the attacks, but modern analysis just finds it unacceptable. It's incredibly awkward, risky for the killer. The victim could easily scream, fight back, run. Understanding this shift is important. It changes how you see the killer, less frantic opportunist, more chillingly controlled, deliberate. It impacts how crimes like this are profiled even now.
So if not from behind, how did it likely happen?
The accepted MO now is that they faced each other. The victim's hands would likely be busy lifting her skirts, leaving her defenseless. First step was strangulation, until unconscious or dead. Autopsies consistently showed this. Then he lowered them carefully to the ground, head towards his left.
How do they know that specifically?
Body positioning, often found near walls or fences, leaving no room for him to be on their left. Plus, no bruising on the back of their head suggesting they weren't just dropped.
Okay, and the mutilations that became his horrifying signature.
Throat cutting happened after they were on the ground. Blood spatter analysis is key here. Stains showed blood pooling beside or under the neck, not spraying forward like it would if they were standing. There was even blood on a fence once, about 14 inches high, consistent with an arterial spurt from someone lying down. It also meant less blood likely got on the killer.
Less blood, especially if they were already dead from strangulation.
Exactly. If the heart's not beating, the bleeding is much less dramatic.
The level of planning, especially in near darkness, it's chilling. What kind of person does this?
Well, the other mutilations seem to have been done from the victim's right side, or maybe by straddling the body near the feet, pushing the legs up to get closer. Importantly, no signs of sexual intercourse, no masturbation. This wasn't about sexual release in that sense. But, and this is a grim link to modern serial killers, he often took organs, what they call viscera, a piece of kidney, the uterus, like a trophy.
So definitely not random frenzy. There was thought involved. Anatomical knowledge, maybe?
Most surgeons at the time thought so. Some degree of anatomical knowledge was the phrase used, like removing a kidney cleanly from the front without damaging nearby organs, or removing sexual organs with a single precise cut. It suggests skill, and almost certainly he had knife experience. Doing that outdoors in the dark quickly, it implies practice.
That precision is terrifying. But equally chilling were the stories around him, often fueled by, well, fake news, essentially. The Ripper letters.
Ah, yes, the letters.
No.
The expert consensus now is pretty solid. Pretty much none of the hundreds of letters claiming to be from the Ripper were actually written by him.
Including the one that gave him his name.
That's the one. The first letter signed Jack the Ripper, dated September 25th, received by the Central News Agency on the 27th. That's where the name stuck.
And then the postcard after the double event.
Right, the October 1st postcard. It mentioned the Stridon Eddowes murders from September 30th, and crucially, referred back to that first Jack the Ripper letter, which hadn't been made public yet.
Sounds convincing.
Almost. But the postmark is October 1st. If he'd killed him on the 30th, why wait until the next day to post it? It makes it less likely. The police were actually convinced it was a journalist trying to keep the story hot.
And wasn't there later evidence pointing to a specific journalist?
Yes. Quite recently, a document surfaced naming Tom Bowling from Central News as the probable author. It highlights how much the media frenzy shaped the narrative. You know, a dynamic we still see today.
Okay, but what about the Lusk letter? The one with the kidney? That one feels different.
It does feel different, and it's the main exception, the one letter that might be genuine. Mid-October, George Lusk, who is heading up a local vigilance committee trying to catch the killer, received a small box. Inside was half of a human kidney preserved in spirits, and a note crudely written starting "From Hell," claiming he'd fried and eaten the other half and that it was from Eddowes.
God, that's gruesome. But could it be real?
It's incredibly hard to say for sure. A lot of the arguments for its authenticity over the years were based on myths or incorrect info. But there's one key piece that makes it possibly real. Catherine Eddowes was known to suffer from Bright's disease, a serious kidney condition. And the doctor who examined the kidney portion sent to Lusk said it appeared consistent with a kidney affected by Bright's disease. That's a specific detail that would be hard for a hoaxer to get right by chance.
So we have this killer, maybe sending a kidney, maybe not, operating before forensics, before fingerprinting. Catching someone meant what? Catching them in the act or getting a confession?
Pretty much. It was old school policing. And another huge challenge was jurisdiction. You didn't just have one police force, you had two. The Metropolitan Police Scotland Yard covered most of London, but the City of London, that historic square mile at the center, had its own separate police force. And Catherine Eddowes was murdered in the city. That brought the City of London police directly into the Ripper hunt.
Two forces. Did that help? More manpower? Or hinder things?
Well, reports suggest the officers on the beat, the rank and file, actually got along okay. But there seems to have been definite friction between the senior officers, the leadership of the two forces. How much that actually hampered the investigation is debatable. Most historians don't overly blame the police. Catching serial killers is incredibly hard even now.
Scotland Yard got a lot of flack, though, didn't they? Public perception was they were incompetent.
They did. Commissioner Sir Charles Warren took a lot of heat, especially for not offering a reward. Though, to be fair to Warren, he apparently wasn't against it. It was his boss, the Home Secretary, Henry Matthews, who refused to authorize one. Standard procedure at the time, apparently, but it looked bad.
So what did they do?
Autopsies, witness statements, the basics. But their tools were limited. The City of London Police, on the other hand, arguably did a slightly better job in terms of process, even though they didn't catch him either. They made detailed crime scene drawings for Eddowes, took multiple photos of her body at the mortuary, and crucially, they photographed Mary Jane Kelly at her crime scene, in her room. She's the only victim photographed in situ, exactly as found.
Wow. That must be invaluable for researchers now.
Absolutely. Those photos offer clues we wouldn't otherwise have.
And there was that incident with the graffiti, right? A major clash between the two forces.
Yes, the Golston Street graffiti. Near where a piece of Eddowes' blood-stained apron was found, discarded by the killer, someone had chalked a message on a wall. It read, "The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing." Jews likely meaning Jews. Now, the city police officer who found it wanted to wait for daylight to photograph it as evidence.
Makes sense.
But Commissioner Warren from the Met Police arrived, took one look, and ordered it erased immediately.
Why?
Fear of sparking anti-Jewish riots in the area, which was already tense. He wouldn't even let them just cover the word Jews. He wanted the whole message gone. Now, it shows a real disagreement in approach, a real friction at the top.
And ultimately, despite all the effort, the searches, the interviews, nothing.
No, the police never charged anyone. They simply didn't have enough evidence to guarantee a conviction against any single suspect.
Which brings us to the suspects themselves. If the police didn't solve it, who might it have been? This is where Ripperology really takes off, isn't it?
Absolutely. The identity remains elusive, fueling endless theories. The first sort of official list came later, in 1894, from Sir Melville Macnaghten, who'd become chief constable at Scotland Yard. He wrote a private memo naming his top 3 suspects.
Okay. Who were they?
His number 1 was a man named M.J. Druitt, Montague John Druitt, a barrister who'd become a schoolteacher and who drowned himself in the Thames in December 1888.
Seems plausible. Suicide after the last murder.
Plausible on the surface, but Macnaghten's memory, or maybe his facts, were shaky. He got Druitt's age wrong, said he was 41, he was 31, said he was a doctor, he wasn't. And crucially, the suicide wasn't immediately after the last murder, Kelly's in early November. It was nearly a month later. And apparently, no other police officer at the time seemed to share Macnaghten's suspicion of Druitt.
Okay, who was number 2 on Macnaghten's list?
Theron Kosminski, a Polish Jew living in Whitechapel. His name only really came to light publicly in the 1980s. A researcher found notes written by Donald Swanson, a senior officer during the investigation, tucked inside a copy of memoirs written by another senior officer, Robert Anderson. Anderson had claimed in his memoirs that the police knew who the Ripper was, a low-class Polish Jew committed to an asylum who died soon after. Swanson's notes seemed to name Kosminski as that man.
Sounds like a strong lead. Case closed.
Not quite. Again, problems arise. No other officer from the time backed up Anderson's claim that they knew who it was. And Swanson's notes, when you read them carefully, seem more like him questioning or commenting on Anderson's claims rather than fully endorsing them. Plus, the real Aaron Kosminski, who was institutionalized, wasn't considered particularly dangerous, more delusional and passive, and he lived until 1919, not dying shortly after the murders. So the details don't quite fit.
And the third one?
Michael Ostrog. Macnaghten just called him a Russian doctor and convict. Later research showed he was basically just a con man, likely not even Russian or a doctor. Zero evidence linking him to the murders. Macnaghten's list, while famous, Seems pretty weak overall.
So beyond McNaughton's picks, any other serious contenders over the years?
Oh, plenty. Frederick Aberline, who was the lead detective on the ground for Scotland Yard, apparently told someone in 1903, after he'd retired, that he suspected a man named Severin Klosowski. Klosowski later went by the alias George Chapman and was hanged for poisoning 3 of his wives.
A serial killer, then.
Yes, but a poisoner. Modern profiling generally rejects him. Poisoning is very different psychologically from the Ripper's MO. The hands-on violence, the mutilation.
Anyone else more recent?
The latest serious suspect is probably Dr. Francis Tumblety. His name only surfaced in the Ripper research world in 1993. It came from a 1913 letter written by John Littlechild, who had been head of Scotland Yard's secret department back in 1888. Littlechild called Tumblety an American quack doctor and said he was a very likely suspect who was strongly suspected at the time.
Was he investigated?
He was. Tumblety was in London in 1888, known for his collection of anatomical specimens, particularly uteri, and he fled back to America shortly after the Kelly murder. Scotland Yard even sent detectives over to the U.S. to investigate him further, so he's a legitimate candidate who was on their radar. But it's unclear if the police continued to view him as their prime suspect or if the trail went cold. Lack of concrete evidence, perhaps.
It's amazing how this case just keeps generating suspects and theories. The whole field of ripperology, it's quite something.
It really is. The evolution of the research is fascinating in itself. You had those early, often tabloid-style writings that created a lot of the myths. Then after World War I, things got a bit more serious. The first proper English book, The Mystery of Jack the Ripper, came out in 1929.
And it really took off later.
Yeah, the 1950s saw this sort of cult-like interest begin. But the 1970s, that's when it just exploded. That was fueled partly by this sensational theory accusing Queen Victoria's grandson, Prince Albert Victor, the Duke of Clarence.
Oh, yes, the royal conspiracy.
Right. That decade also brought out some really wild conspiracy theories. Freemasons, royal physicians, occult groups, you name it, someone probably accused them.
Some good research came out of that period, too.
Thankfully, yes. Amidst the craziness, Donald Rumbelow published The Complete Jack the Ripper, which was much more grounded and factual. And importantly, the official police files from the investigation were finally opened up to the public around that time.
In the 1980s, the centenary.
Yep, a flood of books for the 100th anniversary. Some lost evidence was even mysteriously returned to Scotland Yard. And the FBI's behavioral science unit, the profilers, weighed in with their assessment of the killer. The 1990s gave us essential reference works like the Jack the Ripper A to Z, and Philip Sugden's The Complete History of Jack the Ripper, which is still seen as pretty much the definitive historical account.
And research hasn't stopped. Are new things still being found?
Amazingly, yes. It's often said that in the past 10 years, more evidence has been recovered, new information garnered, and serious research conducted than at any other time since the case was officially closed in 1892. You have things like advances in forensic science being applied, though cautiously, to old evidence, and even old evidence being re-examined. Like Nick Warren, a surgeon studying that second, clearer photo of the Mary Jane Kelly crime scene, the one the city police took.
What did he find?
He was able to establish, pretty convincingly apparently, that a hatchet was used to split one of her leg bones, a detail completely missed or unreported at the time.
So, with all this ongoing work, new techniques, will we ever know? Will the mystery finally be solved? It feels like it's always just out of reach.
Well, it's definitely open to debate. There are a couple of ways it could go. If the police back then actually did figure it out, but kept it quiet for some reason, maybe protecting someone important, maybe lack of proof for court, then yes, the odds are decent it could be rediscovered. A lost file turns up, a hidden diary. But the more likely scenario, at least according to most serious researchers today, is that the police simply did not solve it. I mean, individual officers had their pet theories, like Anderson or Aberline, but the forces, as institutions, never landed on one guy they were sure was the Ripper.
Which means researchers today need more than just finding lost police reports.
Exactly. It means they need to find new evidence, something the original investigation missed entirely, which is a monumental task, obviously. And the biggest hurdle is the lost evidence itself.
Right, you mentioned files being lost. How much is actually missing?
A huge amount. Almost all the City of London police files on the case were destroyed in the Blitz during World War II bombing raids. Gone forever. And the Metropolitan Police files that survive are surprisingly thin.
Was that deliberate? A cover-up?
That's the romantic myth, but the truth is probably much more. Well, pedestrian and unromantic, as one historian put it. Think about it. Documents taken as souvenirs over the years, clerks clearing out old filing cabinets to make space decades later, maybe even well-meaning but misguided ripperologists in modern times accidentally removing things from archives thinking they were duplicates or unimportant. It
Yeah.
just disappears over time.
So despite the lost evidence, despite the challenges, there's still a chance.
I think so. It seems perfectly possible the identity may one day be discovered. Could it be one of the known suspects seen in a new light? Could it be someone dismissed back then who deserves another look? Or could it be someone whose name has never even been connected to the case before? The puzzle remains open.
It really is an incredible story. A true crime case that grabbed the world's attention over a century ago, was massively shaped by the media of its day, and still, after all this time, refuses to give up its final secret.
Absolutely. So thinking about everything we've discussed, the Ripper's chilling methods, the questionable letters, the media storm, the competing police forces, the lost evidence, what does this deep dive tell you about trying to find truth in these old historical mysteries? How much can we ever really know for sure when so much of the original picture has faded away?